Hey guys, welcome to the Bitcoin Fortress podcast, helping you increase your financial freedom. This is episode 146, recorded here on December 15th, 2024. This podcast is for entertainment only and is non-investing advice. So as always, please do your own homework. I just got a new orange block clock. So we are recording this at block height 874,905. Current price of a US dollar is 968 sats. And the high, medium, and low rates are 5, 6, and 6 for transaction fees. We'll get into the market news and an update and outlook. Then we'll get into the weekly top Bitcoin news and finish up with this week's featured post on the Bitcoin Fortress Substack. I guess it's more of a hopium kind of episode. A lot of positive stuff this week with, the price going up and so on. But anyway. With that, we will jump right in. It was a mixed week for Wall Street's major averages. The awful market breadth and some concerns sparked by hot inflation data weighed on sentiment, which contributed to the S&P 500 snapping a 3-week win streak. More interestingly, the benchmark gauge is now on a 10-day run of negative market breadth, meaning there have been more decliners than advancers on the index for 10 consecutive trading days. The last time such an event happened was in the aftermath of 9/11. Looking at this week's inflation data, the consumer price index numbers for November came in line with estimates, but the headline figure still notched its highest month-over-month reading since April. Furthermore, producer price index readings came in hotter than anticipated. However, market participants are almost certain that the Federal Reserve will deliver a quarter point rate cut at its final monetary policy decision next week. This week, technology stocks were a bright spot, though the sector eventually ended with a marginal loss after poorly received quarterly results from creative software maker Adobe. Broadcom's earnings fanned the artificial intelligence trade as its guidance of up to $90 billion in revenue from custom AI chips by 2027 drove investors into a frenzy. In a historic first, the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite closed above 20,000 points on Wednesday, and for the week, the S&P 500 slipped 0.6%, while the blue chip Dow shed 1.8%, and the Nasdaq added 0.3%. Looking ahead, the year may be winding down, but for market participants, it will still be a busy week. It is central banks galore over the next few days, with the Federal Reserve grabbing the spotlight. The Fed's final monetary policy rate decision of the year will come on Wednesday, followed by the Bank of Japan and the Bank of England on Thursday. Small groups of people setting the price of the most important thing in the world, which is the price of money. You gotta love it. Despite some hotter than expected inflation data this week, traders are near certain that the Fed will deliver a quarter point interest rate cut. Ahead of the Fed, Wall Street will receive November U.S. retail sales data. After the Fed decision, the focus will shift to an update on Q3 GDP growth and the November personal income and outlays report, which will contain a reading on the Fed's favorite inflation gauge, the Core Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index. In terms of the earnings season, there are a few major names scheduled to announce their results, including memory chipmaker Micron Technology, delivery giant FedEx, and the world's biggest shoe company, Nike. All right, moving on to the Bitcoin news. This first one here is block 874874. Important news of the week from No BS Bitcoin. Lots and lots of stuff in here, so we'll jump right in. OpenSats renews support for 9 Bitcoin projects. The nonprofit announced a renewed commitment to 9 projects, including BTC Pay Server, Straten V2, RasBlitz, LNBits, Vexel, Blixt, Crux, BitAxe, and Labelbase. BitAxe. I love BitAxe. I got a couple of those. Wabi Sabi vulnerability allows malicious coordinators to de-anonymize CoinJoin users. A vulnerability in the Wabi Sabi protocol enables malicious coordinators to de-anonymize users' coins and link inputs to outputs, compromising the privacy of CoinJoin participants. This vulnerability affects Wasabi Wallet version 2.2.1.0 or earlier, Ginger Wallet version 2.0.13 or earlier, and the BTC Pay CoinJoin plugin version 1.0.101.0 or earlier. Users are urged to update their instances immediately. Fran Finney joins Nostr, earns over 1 million sats. Fran Finney, the wife of Bitcoin legend Hal Finney, the first Bitcoin transaction recipient, has joined Nostr and earned over 1 million sats. Vulnerability disclosure, irrevocable fees on the Lightning Network, Eclair version 0.9.0 and older, LDK version 0.0.122 and older, and LND version 0.18.2 beta and older with default settings. And Core Lightning with non-default settings would accept a series of operations that could allow a miner to steal up to 98% of a channel's funds. Core Lightning remains vulnerable to the worst case scenario if the ignore fee limits configuration setting is enabled. Mitigations at the base layer directly in the transaction relay stack were not seriously considered during the embargo period. In my personal opinion, a robust mitigation against transaction relay throughput attacks could be more efficient at the base layer rather than at the Lightning contracting protocols level, said the developer. Vulnerability disclosure, transaction relay jamming attack against off-chain protocols. Antoine Riard posted on the Bitcoin dev mailing list to disclose a new transaction relay jamming attack against off-chain protocols by exploiting the transaction selection, announcement, and propagation mechanisms of base layer full nodes. The vulnerability report recommends mitigation strategies such as randomized transaction rebroadcast and increased transaction relay throughput. However, it underscores the need for more comprehensive and robust solution integrated into Bitcoin's base protocol to effectively address the vulnerability. Sounds like a soft fork is coming or going to be discussed. We'll see. El Salvador might have to strip Bitcoin of its legal tender status to secure a $1.3 billion IMF loan. Oh no, say it isn't so. A Financial Times report citing people close to the talks states that a new lending package would be approved by the IMF board if El Salvador drops the legal requirement for businesses to accept Bitcoin as payment, making it voluntary to do so. The final details of the agreement are expected to be revealed in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And Stacy Herbert posted, "Don't trust, verify." So I guess we'll see. El Salvador and Argentina partner to regulate crypto industry. Juan Carlos Reyes, El Salvador's chief crypto regulator and president of the Comisión Nacional de Activos Digitales, along with Roberto Silva, president of Argentina's Comisión Nacional de Valores, signed an agreement to collaborate on cryptocurrency regulation. Coinbase user gets 2 years in prison for filing false tax returns. Frank Richard Algren III, a Bitcoin investor since 2011 from Austin, Texas, has been sentenced to 2 years in prison for intentionally underreporting capital gains from the sale of $3.7 million worth of Bitcoin. Well, his first mistake was selling. But anyway, this case marks the first criminal tax evasion prosecution centered solely on cryptocurrency, as the prices for cryptocurrency are high. So is the temptation to not pay taxes on its sale. Avoid the temptation and avoid federal prison. said acting special agent in charge Lucy Tan of IRS Criminal Investigations, Houston Field Office. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. More documents on Operation Choke Point version 2.0, according to Coinbase, recently revealed heavily redacted FDIC letters sent to banks in 2022 urged them to sever ties with crypto firms due to concerns about risk management, fraud, consumer protection, and financial stability, aiming to stifle the growth of digital assets. Czech Republic eliminates capital gains tax for Bitcoin held over 3 years. The country passed a law exempting Bitcoin holdings held over 3 years from capital gains tax. This decision, unanimously approved by Parliament on December 6th, will take effect on January 1st, 2025. France debates tax on unrealized Bitcoin capital gains over 800,000 euros. French Senator Sylvie Vermeillet proposed taxing Bitcoin and digital assets as unproductive assets similar to luxury items with unrealized gains over 800,000 euros taxed. The Senate preliminary approved and the proposal, and Finance Minister Laurent Saint Martin endorsed it. Oh, what a big mistake that is. They just want people to leave, I guess. Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Bill in Texas. The Texas House introduced a bill to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The proposed bill would enable the state to accept taxes, fees, and donations in Bitcoin, which must be held for at least 5 years. Yeah, we'll get into this in a little more detail later, but the Vancouver City will study Bitcoin integration. On December 11th, Vancouver City Council approved a motion to study Bitcoin integration, supported by Mayor Ken Sim. The initiative explores accepting Bitcoin for taxes and services and possibly converting part of the city's reserves to Bitcoin. Australia, AMP becomes the first national pension fund to invest in Bitcoin. The institution allocated $27 million back in May when it traded at $60,000 per coin. The sum represents 0.05% of its $57 billion in assets under management. Iran moves to regulate cryptocurrencies. The country's economic affairs and finance minister Abdel Nasser Hamadi said Iran will aim to minimize cryptocurrencies' negative economic effects and maximize its benefits with digital money regulated by the central bank. Oh, CBDC. Surprise, surprise. Bitcoin reserve discussions reach Russia. A new proposal to add Bitcoin to the country's national reserves was reportedly made by Anton Chuk Chukchev, a state Duma member from the New People Party. According to RIA Novosti, this initiative aims to find alternatives to traditional financial systems amid increasing international pressures. Ukraine bill seeks to legalize Bitcoin by early 2025. Ukraine is drafting a bill to regulate Bitcoin by early 2025, involving a parliamentary group, the National Bank, and the IMF, according to Ukrainska Pravda. In consultations with European experts and the IMF, we are taking a very cautious approach to using cryptocurrencies for tax exemptions, as it could potentially facilitate tax evasion in traditional markets. Danilo Hetmantsev, head of the Ukrainian parliament's Committee on Finance, Tax, and Customs Policy, told the bloc. The Kenya National Fire Brigades Association establishes a Bitcoin reserve. Proof of Workforce, a U.S. nonprofit promoting Bitcoin adoption among unions and workers, facilitated a donation to strengthen Kenya's firefighting reserve services. And there's a nice picture here of, I think that's Dom Bay. I think he's the one that's heading that up. He's a firefighter from Santa Monica, I think. Um, so very cool to see. MicroStrategy buys an additional 21,550 Bitcoin. The company has acquired 21,550 Bitcoin for $2.1 billion at a price of $98,783 per coin and currently holds 423,650 Bitcoin. MicroStrategy may be added to the Nasdaq 100 index. Actually, I think it was, so we'll cover that a little bit later. Um, so I won't go into that right now. Riot Platforms buys an additional 5,117 Bitcoin. The company bought 5,117 Bitcoin for $510 million, raising its total holdings to 16,728 Bitcoin as of December 12th. Mara acquires 11,774 Bitcoin for $1.1 billion. The company announced that it acquired additional Bitcoin at an average price of $96,000 per coin, increasing its total holdings to 40,435 Bitcoin as of December 9th, valued at approximately $3.9 billion. BlackRock recommends 2.2% Bitcoin allocation in 60/40 portfolios. The world's largest asset manager recommends a 1 to 2% Bitcoin allocation in multi-asset portfolios, according to a December 12th paper. Amazon shareholders pressure it to consider Bitcoin strategy. The company's shareholders advocate allocating at least 5% of company assets to Bitcoin via a proposal submitted by the National Center for Public Policy Research. Microsoft shareholders vote against Bitcoin treasury strategy. Microsoft's board opposed the proposal, citing volatility as a key concern and noting that management already carefully considers this topic. The company reportedly holds $78.4 billion in cash and marketable securities, a giant melting ice cube. And they can just have fun staying poor, I guess. Coincheck becomes second exchange to go public on Nasdaq. Coincheck, Japan's second largest cryptocurrency exchange, is set to list on Nasdaq today. The company will merge with Thunderbridge Capital, making it the second cryptocurrency exchange to go public in the United States, reports the block. Rely raises $12 million Series A funding round. The self-custodial app dedicated to buying and selling Bitcoin has secured $12 million in Series A funding round led by Ego Death Capital. I think that's Jeff Booth's company, if I'm not mistaken. This investment elevates Rely's post-money valuation to $72 million per the company's CEO, Julian Liniger. Lava closes $10 million Series A led by Khosla Ventures and Founders Fund. The New York-based Bitcoin lending platform will use the funds to develop additional services, including the ability to buy Bitcoin as well as Bitcoin payment services. Breeze partners with Clever. The companies will work to integrate Lightning payments into the wallet using the Breeze SDK. Clever is a self-custody multi-coin wallet that reportedly has over 100,000 monthly active users. Strike announces USDT deposits and withdrawals. The Lightning Payments app now supports USDT deposits and withdrawals via the Tron network for eligible customers in Argentina, Brazil, El Salvador, India, Kenya, Mexico, Nigeria, Togo, and Vietnam. Bitmain launches U.S. production line. The leading Bitcoin mining hardware manufacturer has launched a new production facility in the United States amid escalating trade tensions between the United States and China. This strategic move aims to provide faster response times and more efficient services to the North American customers. The first batch of Antminer S21 Pro units will be delivered this December, providing a significant boost to our partners' mining competitiveness, said the company. MicroBT launches WhatsMiner M6S++ series. Zhuosheng Yang, MicroBT CEO, announced new additions to the WhatsMiner M60 production line, aiming for an efficiency of 15.5 joules per terahash. Digital Currency Group is splitting Foundry's mining business into two entities. Digital Currency Group is splitting and this is reported by Blockspace Media. The newly formed Fortitude Mining will take over Foundry's former self-mining operations and physical infrastructure, while Foundry will continue to manage its pool operations and other Bitcoin mining service lines. Bitcoin ATM operator Byte Federal reports data breach affecting 58,000 users. The breach occurred on September 30th and was discovered by Byte Federal on November 18th. Customer personal information that was subject to the attempt at unauthorized access includes name, birth date, address, phone number, email address, government issued ID, social security number, transaction activity, and photographs of users, said the company. Well, that's just awesome. Gotta love KYC. FinCEN appeals the Corporate Transparency Act ruling. The agency has filed a notice of appeal with the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit regarding a ruling on the Corporate Transparency Act. It also stated that it will comply with the order from the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Texas as long as it remains in effect, adding that reporting companies may continue to voluntarily submit beneficial ownership information reports. The Eye of Sauron has been thwarted, but it continues to fight. Chain Analysis claims cryptocurrency funds Syrian rebels. The blockchain surveillance firm reported that Syria's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham used cryptocurrencies after overthrowing Assad on December 8th. It identified 4 donation addresses linked to campaigns and a sanctioned individual's address, but did not disclose transaction volumes, reports Lola L33TZ for The Rage. Pleb Lab announces Season 2 of Top Builder 2025. Top Builder is a 3-month global competition for teams to create impactful Bitcoin solutions with mentorship, collaboration, and innovation. And there's a link here to apply and start building in the article. Bitcoin Mena conference took place this week. Day 1 and Day 2 talks are available on the Bitcoin Magazine YouTube channel. The agenda is also available here, and there is a link. Africa Bitcoin Conference 2024 recordings. The event took place on December 9th through 11th in Nairobi, Kenya. Full schedule for the talks is available here, and there's a link, and they also have links to the morning and afternoon sessions on each day. And that wraps up No BS Bitcoin. Moving on, Hodler's Digest for the week December 8th to 14th from Cointelegraph. We'll just skip over the shitcoinery and get right to the good stuff. Analysts at JP Morgan raised price targets for 4 Bitcoin mining stocks to reflect value from the miners' electrical power assets and Bitcoin holdings, according to a December 10th report shared with Cointelegraph. The mining operations to see upgrades include Mara Holdings, CleanSpark, Riot Platforms, and Iron. According to the report, which was written by analysts Reginald Smith and Charles Pierce, each stock is already trading near or above its revised price target. We previously valued Bitcoin miners based on the 4-year gross profit opportunity for each operator, the analyst said. We are expanding upon this framework by incorporating 1, the value of each company's land and power assets, and 2, a HODL premium, which gives miners credit for holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, like MicroStrategy. Let's see. Next article about Ripple. We'll skip that. Um, hmm. Crypto exchange traded fund issuer Bitwise predicted that at least 5 crypto unicorns will go public in 2025, including stablecoin issuer Circle and crypto exchange Kraken. So-called crypto bank Anchorage Digital, analytics firm Chainalysis, and crypto exchange Figure are the other 3 firms expected to launch initial public offerings next year. Bitwise investment chief Matt Haugen and research head Ryan Rasmussen wrote in a 10 crypto predictions for 2025 report on December 10th. Growing investor demand, institutional adoption, a favorable macro environment, and a warmer political environment were the main catalysts that led to the pair to name 2025 as the, quote, year of the crypto IPO. Riot Platforms has proposed raising $500 million to buy more Bitcoin. The company may conduct a private bond issue for qualified institutional investors. Its decision comes as Bitcoin hovers around an all-time high, and other industry heavyweights have made large acquisitions at top prices. Riot may offer senior convertible notes through private offering memorandums. Purchasers would have the option of buying 75 million more in notes within 3 days of their initial purchase. The offering will be subject to market conditions, it said, and no mention was made of interest payments. The notes will be unsecured senior obligations with the January 15th, 2030 maturity date and will be redeemed or converted into Riot common stock at the company's election. The conversion rate and other terms will be determined at the time of pricing the offering. Riot said that it will use the funds to acquire additional Bitcoin and for general corporate purposes. Riot held 10,427 Bitcoin at the end of the third quarter of the year. After producing 1,104 Bitcoin that quarter and selling none, it produced 844 Bitcoin in the previous quarter. Binance CEO Richard Teng said after its forced exit a year ago, it's too early to discuss whether the crypto exchange might reestablish itself in the United States now that the pro-crypto president is set to take office. Whether we re-enter the US market, I think that's a premature discussion, Teng told Bloomberg TV on December 9th, after he was asked if Binance would look for a way back into the country or if it might relaunch its Binance USD stablecoin. As of now, we are focusing on our global deployment, he said, hinting that the exchange is seeking to capture market share and eyeing the institutions, sovereign wealth funds, and high net worth individuals that are going to start allocating to this space. Binance exited the US in November 2023 as part of a $4.3 billion settlement with the US government for sanctions violations, money laundering, and operating as an unlicensed money transmitter. And we will probably get into this one a little later as well. Uh, but surging institutional inflows could cause Bitcoin demand shocks in 2025 and potentially send Bitcoin's price soaring, according to a December 12th report by Signum Bank, a crypto-focused asset manager. Institutional capital flows are already exerting a multiplier effect on Bitcoin's spot price, with every $1 billion worth of net inflows into spot exchange-traded funds driving an approximately 3 to 6% price move, Signum said in its Crypto Market Outlook 2025 report. Signum expects this dynamic to accelerate in 2025 as large institutional investors, including sovereign wealth funds, endowments, and pension funds, and let's not forget nation states, and that's what we're going to talk about more later, add Bitcoin allocations. With improving U.S. regulatory clarity and the potential for Bitcoin to be recognized as a central bank reserve asset, 2025 could mark steep acceleration for institutional participation in crypto assets, Martin Berger, Signum's chief clients officer, said in a statement. FUD of the week, but this really isn't FUD, it's just kind of funny, so I'm going to read it anyway. A hacker exploited a critical vulnerability in the Dogecoin network, causing 69% of its nodes to crash. On December 12th, Andreas Cole, co-founder of Bitcoin sidechain Sequentia, claimed that he had crashed 69% of the Dogecoin network. Cole said he used an old laptop in El Salvador to execute the crash. Data from Blockchain indicated that Dogecoin had 647 active nodes before the vulnerability was exploited. At the time of writing, Dogecoin had 315 active nodes. Cole said he used a vulnerability discovered by researcher Tobias Ruck to cause the nodes to crash. On December 4th, an X account called Department of Doge Efficiency publicly disclosed a vulnerability on the Dogecoin network that they said could have crashed the chain entirely. According to the account, the Doge Reaper vulnerability allows anyone to crash any Dogecoin node remotely. Australia has proposed stricter anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing rules aimed at tightening oversight of the cryptocurrency industry to combat financial crime. The proposed rules, introduced by the Australian Transaction Reports and Analysis Centre, follows on the heels of amendments to the AML-CTF Act passed by Parliament in November. The updated framework aims to close regulatory gaps, improve oversight of high-risk sectors, increase customer due diligence measures, enforce stricter reporting obligations, and implement tighter rules for businesses. The draft rules are open for public consultation until February 14, 2025, as Austrac calls on industry stakeholders, particularly those in crypto and financial services, to provide feedback to inform the final version of the framework. And also from Australia, the Federal Court of Australia fined the Australian operator of United States-based cryptocurrency exchange Kraken 8 million Australian dollars or 5.1 million US dollars after siding with the country's corporate regulator. In a December 12th judgment, Justice John Nicholas ordered BitTrade, which operates Kraken Australia, to pay the fine within 60 days and cover court costs. The court found that BitTrade failed to comply with design and distribution obligations and acted as a credit facility without a license. The penalty is less than the 12.8 million sought by the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, which Nicholas described as excessive. Still, it exceeded BitTrade's request to limit the fine to $2.5 million, which the judge deemed insufficient. We appreciate the court recognized our compliance efforts, but are disappointed with the outcome of this case, a Kraken spokesperson told Cointelegraph. Wow, Australia is just not liking the crypto, are they? Next up, this is from CoinDesk. This was posted on December 13th. Larger cohorts than US ETFs or MicroStrategy are dictating Bitcoin price, according to Van Straten. Since Donald Trump won the US election on November 5th, Bitcoin has soared from $67,000 to around $100,000. This has coincided with a huge rise in Bitcoin's total trade volume, which now surpassed $100 billion dollars. According to Check on chain data, Bitcoin futures trading volume hit an all-time high of around $120 billion dollars on November 17th, almost doubling since the US election. However, since then, futures trade volume has plateaued and steadied around $100 billion. The same can be seen with spot trade volume, which has also doubled from around $6 billion to $12 billion, while the spot listed US exchange traded funds trade volume has also picked up, reaching $4 billion dollars a day. Bitcoin remains in a key trading range of 100,000, going above and below the key psychological area on multiple occasions. A lot of this has to do with the enormous sell pressure coming from long-term holders or investors who have held Bitcoin for longer than 155 days. Since September, long-term holders have sold 843,113 Bitcoin. In the same period, short-term holders, those who have held Bitcoin for less than 155 days, have accumulated 1,081,633 Bitcoin. This works out to around 9,960 Bitcoin sold by long-term holders and short-term holders accumulating 12,432 Bitcoin per day. To show the difference of trading volumes between long and short-term holders, we compare them to other big players in the industry, such as self-described Bitcoin development company MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy holds 423,650 Bitcoin, or just over 2% of the total supply. In addition, US ETFs now hold over 1 million Bitcoin. Since September, MicroStrategy has accumulated 197,250 Bitcoin, which works out to roughly 2,168 Bitcoin per day, while the US ETFs have accumulated approximately 205,000 Bitcoin, which works out to 2,253 Bitcoin per day. The US ETF Bitcoin balance has grown from 916,000 Bitcoin to 1.12 million Bitcoin. In order for Bitcoin to conclusively break higher of 100,000, we will need to see long-term holders dial down on offloading their tokens or have bigger cohorts enter the space and pick up the buys. Next up, this is from Bitcoin.com news. This was posted, I think, yesterday. MicroStrategy joins Nasdaq 100. Bitcoin's dominance solidified on Wall Street. Nasdaq Inc., a leading global technology company and stock exchange operator, announced its annual adjustments to the Nasdaq 100 index on Friday, with changes set to take effect before markets open on December 23rd. The reshuffle will introduce three new members: Palantir Technologies, MicroStrategy, and Axon Enterprise. These changes reflect the index's focus on including the largest non-financial companies listed on Nasdaq. MicroStrategy's stock has soared nearly 500% year to date, driven by its aggressive Bitcoin investment strategy, led by Executive Chairman Michael Saylor. A well-known advocate for Bitcoin, the company has evolved into a significant Bitcoin investment vehicle. It currently hodls 423,650 Bitcoin, valued at approximately $43 billion. This strategic approach has strengthened investor confidence, linking the stock's performance closely with Bitcoin's price movements. Analysts anticipate that its addition to the index will boost institutional interest as funds tracking the Nasdaq 100 will acquire MicroStrategy shares. Prior to the inclusion announcement, Gautam Chugani, an analyst at financial research firm Bernstein, highlighted this impact. This would lead to inclusion of MicroStrategy in some of the largest ETFs, such as QQQ, fifth largest ETF, etc., leading to one-time fresh buying and ongoing participation in future inflows. As part of the reshuffle, Illumina, Supermicrocomputer, and Moderna will be removed. The Nasdaq 100 index, a benchmark for major financial products such as Invesco QQQ Trust, undergoes annual reconstitution to maintain its representation of the largest non-financial companies. Chugani also commented on potential challenges for MicroStrategy's inclusion in the S&P 500, stating, "The market will likely set its sight on the S&P 500 inclusion for 2025. Currently, due to profitability of its software business, it may be challenging to be considered for S&P 500 inclusion. As Bitcoin gains mainstream acceptance, MicroStrategy's future appears increasingly tied to its role as one of the largest corporate holders of cryptocurrency, amplifying its presence in both the tech and financial sectors." Next up from Cointelegraph, this was posted today. Trump may use Bitcoin as the U.S. reserve asset on day one. How high will the Bitcoin price go? Trump will likely issue an executive order on his first day in office to designate Bitcoin as the United States reserve asset, according to Jack Mallers, CEO and founder of Strike. In a podcast interview with YouTuber Tim Pool, Mahler's explained that the president-elect could rely on provisions within the so-called Dollar Stabilization Act, which grants him considerable authority to protect the U.S. dollar. There's a potential to use a day one executive order to purchase Bitcoin, Mahler stated, adding, "It wouldn't be the size and scale of a million coins, but it would be a significant position." The Bitcoin Act of 2024, introduced by pro-crypto Senator Cynthia Lummis in July, proposes that Treasury and Federal Reserve purchase 200,000 Bitcoin annually over 5 years, accumulating 1 million Bitcoin. The reserve will be held for at least 20 years, thereby taking 5% of Bitcoin's total supply of 21 million tokens from circulation. These speculations have resulted in some lofty new Bitcoin price movements for 2025 and beyond. Bitcoin price may hit 800,000 by 2025's end. According to Perion Boring, founder of the Digital Chamber, Bitcoin's capped supply could lead to significant price appreciation, especially if Trump successfully implements many of his proposed crypto policies. If Donald Trump is successful in putting forth a lot of the proposals that he's proposed to the crypto community, the sky's the limit because Bitcoin has a fixed supply, Boring stated in an interview with Fox Business. She pointed to the stock to flow model, which forecasts Bitcoin's price to exceed $800,000 by the end of 2025. Such a surge would push Bitcoin's market cap to around $15 trillion, up from its current valuation of over $2 trillion. Plan B, the creator of the stock to flow model, meanwhile, predicts Bitcoin to average around the $500,000 valuation across 2025. However, he believes that the price may go as high as a million. The stock to flow model's Bitcoin price prediction hinges on the assumption that demand for Bitcoin will continue to grow. The U.S. Treasury theoretically accumulating 200,000 Bitcoin every year reinforces the idea of stronger demand in coming years, since it'll likely force other countries to consider a strategic Bitcoin reserve of their own. BlackRock, which manages over $10 trillion worth of assets, has already recommending investors to allocate 1 to 2% of their portfolio to Bitcoin. We see a case for investors with suitable governance and risk tolerance to include Bitcoin in a multi-asset portfolio. The firm's four senior executives, including Samara Cohen, Chief Investment Officer of ETFs, and Paul Henderson, Senior Portfolio Strategist of BlackRock Investment Institute, said in a report published on December 12th. To put this into perspective, the total global reserve assets are valued at approximately 900 trillion. A 2% allocation to Bitcoin from this pool would, in theory, drive the cryptocurrency's price to around $900,000 per unit. Whew, the hopium is strong this week. Also on the national game theory front is an article from Decrypt. This was posted today. Bitcoin is flying high. These countries are considering a national reserve. Some countries are mulling a national Bitcoin reserve amid a historic market run-up that has pushed the world's largest cryptocurrency to new heights in recent weeks, with Bitcoin topping $100,000 for the first time earlier this month. The United States President-elect Donald Trump and his allies have repeatedly thrown their support behind a bill to stock the Federal Reserve with the asset and will soon be in position to potentially make that a reality. Government officials in Brazil have also put forth legislation to realize that possibility, while politicians in Poland and Russia have endorsed the idea of adding the digital currency to their nation's balance sheets. El Salvador led the charge on this front, making Bitcoin legal tender while gradually amassing Bitcoin for its own reserves starting in 2021. And now President Bukele is taking a victory lap. While it's unclear whether other countries will actually stockpile Bitcoin anytime soon, the one thing is obvious. Interest in holding the token as a reserve asset has reached a fever pitch. Here's who's considering a national Bitcoin reserve. First, of course, is the United States. Several U.S. lawmakers have made pushes to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming last spring unveiled a bill called the Bitcoin Act that calls for the U.S. to acquire as much as 200,000 Bitcoin annually over a 5-year period, or up to 5% of the token's total supply. The Bitcoin would be kept in a decentralized network of secure Bitcoin vaults operated by the United States Department of Treasury, with token acquisitions being accomplished through a diversification of existing Federal Reserve funds such as bonds, loans, and gold. President-elect Donald Trump similarly endorsed a strategic Bitcoin stockpile last July at BTC 2024 in Nashville, one of many such crypto-related promises that he'll be expected to honor once in office. It will be the policy of my administration to keep 100% of all Bitcoin the U.S. government currently holds or acquires into the future, Trump said at the event. At the state level, efforts to create Bitcoin reserves are also underway. A Texas lawmaker put forth a bill last week that would order the state to create a Bitcoin stash, with funds in the reserve being held for at least 5 years. Meanwhile, a similar bill was proposed in Pennsylvania in November. Brazil's government has proposed a bill that would greenlight a national Bitcoin reserve. The sovereign strategic reserve of Bitcoins would allow for 5% of Brazil's international reserves, according to the proposed legislation filed on November 25th. It aims to diversify the Brazilian treasury's assets. Incorporating Bitcoin into the treasury will reduce Brazil's exposure to exchange rate fluctuations and geopolitical risks, increasing economic resilience, Federal Deputy Eros Biondini said in the proposed bill. Under the proposal, Brazil's central bank would manage the Bitcoin reserve in partnership with the Ministry of Finance. Those funds would be used to back Brazil's CBDC, called DREX. The Bitcoin would be stored in cold wallets, according to the bill. Polish presidential candidate Sławomir Mencen has advocated for the creation of a strategic Bitcoin reserve, as well as for the passing of crypto-friendly laws and regulations in Poland. If I become the president of Poland, our country will become a cryptocurrency haven with very friendly regulations, low taxes, and a supportive approach from banks and regulators, Mencen said in a recent post on X, formerly known as Twitter. It is high time Polish politicians also look to the future, the politician said in another X post. The far-right nationalist candidate is running third in the polls in the Eastern European country. It is unclear if Mencen's political opponents also support the creation of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. In December, Russian parliamentary deputy Anton Chakov proposed creating a national Bitcoin reserve, state news agency RIA reported. The push came after several Russian legislators in November suggested creating a stash of crypto in the state treasury, despite opposition from Russian State Duma Committee Chairman Anatoly Aksakov. They also succeeded in passing legislation legalizing crypto mining and the use of digital assets for international payments this fall. Russia's recent change in tune on crypto suggests the Eastern European country could revisit the issue of a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which at least one of its top officials has previously expressed support for. In a 2021 interview with Russian news outlet Interfax, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Minister Alexander Pankin expressed an openness to partially replacing the country's US dollar-backed reserves and trade settlements with other currencies, including cryptocurrencies. Russia could replace US dollars with various national currencies as well. In the future, probably some kind of digital assets, Pankin told the outlet. And finally, Japanese lawmaker Satoshi Hamada submitted a formal request to his nation's legislature in December to initiate a discussion about creating a national Bitcoin reserve for Japan. Hamada's party holds just 2 seats in Japan's national diet. However, there are other Bitcoin backers in the legislature. In October, Democratic Party for the People leader Yuichiro Tamaki proposed tax cuts and regulatory reform for crypto holders and companies alike in Japan. And finally, we'll talk about this article here, which is from bitcoinnews.com. This was posted on December 13th. Vancouver City Council approves plans to explore Bitcoin adoption. The city of Vancouver is looking into adding Bitcoin to its financial system after City Council passed a motion in that regard. Mayor Ken Sim is leading the charge to look into accepting Bitcoin for taxes and fees and holding Bitcoin as part of the city's reserves. It's a big move for a big city and marks the first major Canadian city to really consider Bitcoin as part of its municipal strategy, despite regulatory and environmental hurdles. The motion asked staff to do a feasibility study on adding Bitcoin to the city's financial systems with report due first quarter 2025. The study will look at the risks, benefits, and logistics of being a, quote, Bitcoin friendly city. Mayor Sim, who has been a longtime Bitcoin advocate, said it would be irresponsible for the city of Vancouver to not look at the merits of adding Bitcoin to the city's strategic assets to preserve financial stability. He has called Bitcoin the greatest invention in human history and has promised to personally donate $10,000 worth of Bitcoin to the city, regardless of the study's outcome. Sim, who has investments in digital asset related funds and companies like Coinbase Global and Purpose Bitcoin ETF, said Bitcoin could be a hedge against inflation and the volatility of traditional fiat currencies. Bitcoin is the number one performing asset on the planet after the last 16 years, he said. To not even look at including it as part of a diversified portfolio is, I think, reckless. Some residents and digital asset fans are in favor of the motion, while others are not. Green councillor Pete Fry was opposed, citing Bitcoin's connection to money laundering and organized crime. In the absence of any really specific acknowledgement of the very serious issues around money laundering and the history in this city, I don't think this is a step in the right direction, he said, referencing warnings from law enforcement agencies like the Vancouver Police Department and FinTrack. Fellow Green councillor Adrian Carr also raised environmental concerns, pointing out the energy consumption of Bitcoin mining. There is a lot of concern around the use of electricity, she said, and given the current debates around the city's power grid. Despite those, the motion passed with support from Sim's ABC Vancouver Party colleagues. Councillor Peter Meisner, who voted yes, said, I am cognizant that there is a significant difference between residents of Vancouver investing their own money in cryptocurrency and the city doing the same with public money. Even if the study comes back positive, the city has big regulatory hurdles ahead. According to BC's Ministry of Municipal Affairs, local governments can't hold financial reserves in digital assets. The ministry states that current legislation is to protect public funds from undue risk. The federal government oversees the financial framework in Canada, so changes at the municipal level would require broader changes to the law. I don't even think the provinces would have jurisdiction to recognize Bitcoin as a currency in Canada, said Dan Rode, a law professor at the University of Windsor. Vancouver's interest in Bitcoin is a 180-degree turn from where they were just a few years ago. In 2019, they were considering banning Bitcoin ATMs because their use in illegal activities. Interestingly, Vancouver was home to the world's first Bitcoin ATM installed in a downtown coffee shop in 2013. Now, city staff have until 2025 to report back. The study will look at Bitcoin as a municipal asset, the risks of volatility, and the environmental impact of bringing in the digital asset. Proponents say Bitcoin's decentralization and limited supply will protect the city's finances from inflation and currency devaluation and ultimately benefit taxpayers. Mayor Sim is hopeful. He stated, "When we wake up 5 to 10 years from now, this is going to be ubiquitous across the planet. Governments have to catch up." At least for now, Vancouver will study Bitcoin more closely, but it's not a done deal. What happens next depends on the study's results and the city's plan to overcome regulatory hurdles. So, very interesting. They're just going to study it, I guess, but that's better than, I guess, nothing. Finally, I wanted to mention this week's featured post on Bitcoin Fortress Substack. Article is entitled Triumph of Politics Revisited: Lessons for the Trump Administration. And this really kind of recaps a book by David Stockman called Triumph of Politics: Why the Reagan Revolution Failed, and sort of looking at the, I guess, key learnings from that book, and then sort of looking at what the Trump administration has ahead and what the odds are of success or failure relative to that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And with that, let's see. Next up is the weekly top boost on Fountain. Once again, at God's Death with 536 sats. Thank you, sir. And thank you for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please like and leave a comment. Also, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. You can also follow my Substack. It's at bitcoinfortress.substack.com. And you can follow me on Nostr. My NPub is included in the show notes. And with that, I will talk to y'all next week. Bye bye.